Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm really honored to be part of this presentation, and I am also humbled because I'm not really an expert on Nigeria like those of you who are natives and who have been undergoing this trail, for many years. I'm privileged to be a reporter. My background is in opinion journalism at the Washington Times, and in the last few years, I've been an independent writer on Nigeria. What I would like to talk about is media aspects of the crisis, okay? Here's my take. All accounts, Nigeria has a crisis of governance and a crisis of violence and a humanitarian crisis, as the Honorable Jonathan Hasaki and Didi Laugason have well informed us. I'd like to focus my remarks on media establishment, that is, the institutions that tell Nigeria's self-understanding and its story to the whole world, because in many ways, there is a very close parallel between the crisis in Nigeria and in our political crisis in the United States. So in this respect, there's a similarity between these two countries, which I think is obvious, yet it's rarely remarked by Nigerians themselves. Now, just for the moment, consider the parallels between the United States and Nigeria. Both are superpowers in their own ways. Nigeria is the most populous nation in Africa. It has a diaspora of about 1 million people in the United States, according to and it has the potential and resources to be one of the great powers in the world. Of Nigeria, a nation of 205 million people, currently on the dashboard of news organizations around the world due to yesterday's catastrophic explosion. Now, Lebanon has a population of only 4 million, and it has about 500,000 diasporas in the United States. But yesterday's explosion is now called, probably rightly, Hiroshima. It was horrific. It killed more than 100 people, injured more than 4,000. The damage to the port and the city portends a food crisis and international emergency situation that will indeed get substantial news coverage for months, even during this election period in the United States. But by contrast, Nigeria has had a genocidal civil war for more than 10 years. And in terms of loss of life, as Kyle has pointed out, it's the equivalent of 100 Hiroshimas. It has been horrific too, and yet not reported as such by prestige media in the United States. According to the just released statistical summary, Silent Slaughter, produced by International Committee on Nigeria, the loss of life caused by two related Islamic insurgencies during the last 20 years has brought 62,000 innocent deaths. These are deaths, preventable deaths of innocent people. The majority of the victims, as Jonathan Asaki has pointed out, are Christian farmers, but thousands of Muslim Nigerians as well. Just in the last 7 months, as pointed out by Kyle, more than 1,700 people have been hacked to death by Fulani militias. That's 17 Hiroshimas. Now, how often during the last year have we heard about this crisis? Have we heard news about what's happening in Nigeria? Okay, not that much. And so I'd like to deal with why that is and what we can do about it. Okay, both superpowers, they have a political class, which includes wealthy owners of TV stations and newspapers. Just as in the United States, Nigeria's political class controls the academia, trade, and media, regardless of which party is in power. The Nigerians are very extremely savvy about media and modern communications, and that includes Governor El-Rufai. The government has bribed and pressured Nigeria's main media houses to collaborate in projecting a false narrative about the insurrection in the northeast part of the country and where it is most severe, the middle belt, especially in Kaduna. Even the path-breaking Sahara reporters founded by Mr. Sowore, Omowele Sowore, it itself has been compromised by the government when Mr. Sowore became controlled by the current president 5 years ago. The ongoing atrocities don't get reported at all, or they get underreported. Nigerians in the war zones of Kaduna and Plateau State have told me that after massacres, more than a dozen people in in remote villages, as Jonathan Asaki mentioned, village leaders often have to bribe reporters to do stories about the atrocities. The ethnic cleansing of states is so widespread and common that even though it's horrific, it is hardly news. The deaths are not caused by mushroom orange smoke like in Beirut yesterday, but the grisly deaths are in remote rural areas that are professional reporting tribes, Lagos and Abuja. It is expensive and dangerous for reporters to visit the scenes of village massacres. The police, military, and governing authorities are well aware of it. Governor Rufai is well aware of it, and he has compromised the media in Kaduna. They allow jihadist militias to ravage farming villages every month to operate with impunity. The authorities know that Western media won't hear about it, and if they do, they will seek trustworthy authorities such as the United States Embassy to explain it to them. This is where the false narrative comes in. Most of the professional media, those with academic credentials, and the U.S. Embassy itself are saying that this conflict is a conflict of farmers versus herders. Of course, as the Honorable Jonathan Asaki pointed out, this is a canard. It is obviously not true to the Nigerians themselves, and yet it is promoted and it is established by the U.S. Ambassador Mary Beth Leonard herself, who last year told a gathering of NGO staffers in Washington that the United States is good at, and I quote, at managing range wars. That's her view of it. It sums up how Ambassador Leonard sees the cause of 19,000 deaths of people in the Middle Belt by Fulani jihadists. According to hundreds of eyewitness reports, the killers attack in well-organized units of 200 or more men carrying sophisticated assault rifles and wearing military fatigue uniforms. Although I have never been to Nigeria, I work closely with reporters on the ground in Kaduna and in Plateau State. And my on-the-ground reporters are the sources for the stories I've done in many journals. Governor El Rufai is among the most adept at giving a Orwellian explanation of what is at work in Kaduna and other states. He says it's a conflict, it's a communal conflict, or it's conflict between herders, and it's a conflict. As Jonathan has said, nothing could be further from the truth. It is obviously not a balanced conflict between warring parties with equal power and arms. It's exactly the opposite of that. The same kind of false narrative is being presented in the United States at this very moment, and it has been for years. The U.S. population has been told for months, for the last 3 months, that peaceful demonstrators have not rioted in 20 cities in the United States, when the American people see clearly that the opposite is true. They see for the last 60 days Antifa activists trying to burn down and to destroy the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. We can see that the difference, because the citizen journalist and right-wing or conservative news media are showing us the reality of the violence in the United States. So as a result, the American people no longer trust their prestige media. There was a media institution report just released 2 days ago, and it was reported by the Associated Press that more than 50% of the American people do not trust their media. This is a good development. For finally, the Americans realize that their truth tellers are not valid. They have no credibility. The same has not been demonstrated in Nigeria. So we're dealing with a false narrative that is being promulgated by Nigerian media itself. Let me explain what I'm talking about. The cautionary language in Nigeria is like this. The Nigerian media are not allowed, as has been pointed out, they're not allowed to identify the terrorists who are killing people on a broad scale as terrorists. They have to refer to them as bandits or as hooligans or as gangsters. This is a convention that that the Nigerian journalists themselves, because they accept, because many fear to be jailed, like our friend Mr. Stephen Keefus, who's one of the brave participants on this call. Mr. Keefus has been a source of stories about the reality of the genocide, even while he is himself underground, seeking to elude arrest, because he tweeted a story that I published in April about collusion of the Nigerian military with the terrorists themselves. And I'd like to point this out. In middle of April, we did a story about an attack in southern Kaduna in, let's see, what is the, I've given this story to Magna, but I don't think we have the slide on it. There was an attack in Angwan Magaji. The 200 militia Fulani terrorists attacked Angwan Magaji, killed several people, but one of the Fulani attackers was killed by a vigilante on his way out of the village. His cell phone found on his body had 28 numbers on it, which we purchased. 3 of these numbers were numbers to Nigerian police and army. Our man on the ground called one of these numbers, and the person who answered this number was a Nigerian army corporal at a barracks in Bauchi. He was selling assault rifles to the terrorist, and we established that on the telephone call. We did a story about this, and when it was published, no Nigerian media would do a follow-up story. There has been no follow-up to this documentation of collusion. This is not the first time that Fulani terrorist cell phones have been recovered. They were recovered a month earlier and were turned over to the authorities in Jos. No follow-up was noted. There were no arrests. There were no stories. That was not the first time either. 2 years ago, cell phone was recovered in one of the Irigwe villages that was attacked, was turned over to the authorities. Nothing happened as a result of it. So the collaboration between the police and the army is obvious, but the story is not getting out. So Mr. Keefa simply tweeted the story that we published on Zanger News, I think on April 23rd. And as a result of that tweet, with which went viral, the Nigerian military or police began to seek his whereabouts to arrest him. That's why he went underground. Now, I would like to point this out. There has to be a way for us to get out of this morass. In the United States, there is a citizen awakening, and there is a citizen awakening in many states of the European Union. And it's been evident from 2015 with the Brexit movement and with citizens awakenings in Germany, in the United States. And we need a citizen awakening in, speaking from the point of view of an outside observer like myself, I would recommend that there are 3 prescriptions for change, okay? I'm going to, I would like to talk about the prescriptions here. Number 1, solutions, sound and effective alarm to the West. The United States and the European Union can send effective support if there can be a unified call to Nigerian expatriates in the West, and this false narrative can be exposed and challenged. There is abundant evidence that Governor El Rufai is a collaborator with the Fulani militias. He is actually facilitating what is happening, as Jonathan Asaki has said. This story has to get out to a larger public. The International Committee on Nigeria has done a good job, and this Save the Persecuted Christians has done a great job, and I commend Didi Laugason. They have led a movement to call for a special envoy to West Africa to help the Nigerian government to coordinate its remediation of terrorism. That by itself is not enough. There has to be a groundswell of public opinion that will give our cause and rationale and justification to make this step. So I would say first, the Nigerian diaspora in this country to speak up with a loud voice to its elected representatives, their congressmen, their senators, and to news media that are willing to cover this story. In contrast to the way Jews were assisted by American Jews 40 years ago during the Cold War, Nigerian expatriates. Now I'm accepting the brave and very articulate people on this call, but Nigerian pastors and religious and leaders of organizations have not been seeing the ongoing genocide. It is like, as Kyle said, it is a Holocaust happening before our very eyes. With more outspoken protest, then there will be more media coverage of what's happening in West Africa. Secondly, I would like to recommend that as a group of concerned people, we urge that the persecuted minorities in Nigeria, and it's not only the Christians, we must urge that gun ownership laws must be changed and that the Nigerians themselves take initiative to arm themselves. If I have a friend in Nigeria, the first gift I want to give him is a weapon. If I can enable him to purchase weapons, though it may be legal or illegal, it doesn't matter. If Nigerians will take responsibility to arm themselves and to set up their own civil defense forces, there will be less killing. I am sure of it based upon my experience in Iraq. I spent 2 years in Iraq a few years ago during the intense time of the war there. And the difference is striking. In Iraq, in northern Iraq, where ISIS killed so many people, nearly every Iraqi family has an AK-47. Guns are very commonly owned, and this does give families a way to defend themselves. In contrast, in Nigeria, the Christian farmers are disarmed. This has to be reversed. So these are, I believe, common sense observations based upon applicable in West Africa. I think that the false narrative in Nigeria has to be challenged, as it is being challenged by conservative media in this country. And finally, I would like to offer myself to be available to anyone on this call to raise awareness in this country. I would love to work with you and your contacts on the ground in Nigeria